This is the Long Island Retro Gaming Podcast.
I do want to get into a little bit about preservation because in addition to you being the wizard of mod, you're also, in case nobody can tell from watching, George is a pretty nice guy, and he makes friends easy, and I think because of that, he was able to make some connections and talk to people, and just these really amazing things have come out of his efforts. He has a huge love for the history of this hobby, and like me, he really like seeing something come back to life that's rare or not seen a lot or maybe difficult. Something a little bit more than just fixing a cartridge connector on an NES. Really gets him going. So
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not going to gush over you anymore, but like I want you to tell a story. It can your choice. What story? I know
Yeah,
the
sure.
computer space story is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
I know the Atari story. I don't know if that one's not done, so maybe you don't want to say that. But
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the stuff you've been able to do as far as the preservation aspect.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that gets me the most excited. I mean, as much as I love doing the mods, I think nothing makes me happier than when I can take something that was pretty hopeless and bring it back to life and get it so that people can enjoy it again. And I don't care if it's like something. I mean, I love it when it's something rare and undocumented and cool like Computer Space. But even if it's like some guy who comes to me and he's like, "This is my childhood Genesis. Can you make it come back?" And I make it come back, and that's like the best feeling ever. So yeah, I'll go into the Computer Space story. So you totally facilitated this, and it would not have happened without your efforts as well. And so Joel is close friends with a lot of the guys at the Cradle of Aviation Museum, including Seamus. And so he told me that they had this really rare arcade machine called Computer Space, and at that time I didn't really know all that much about it either. I had like some vague understanding of what it was, but
Well, no,
it was.
I'll do the prequel here
Yeah, sure.
because you weren't around for this. So
No, I wasn't.
the expo has been at the Cradle for the past 3 years, and they have had that machine at least that long, if not longer. It's never worked. Always saw it. I didn't know what it was when I first saw it. They had it out on the floor when they had their arcade exhibit. Not turned on because it didn't work. It just I'm gonna put a picture in for the YouTube people who are watching. It's just wildly cool looking. It's this
It's
weird
Yeah.
70s. Uh, I
It
don't.
looks like a terminal from a Star Trek episode
Yes,
or something.
yes,
Yeah,
like a
it's so
'60s Star
beautiful.
Trek. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really neat looking. So I've had just been staring at this thing for years, saying like, man, that is so cool. So then George came on board, and I started getting to know him a little bit, and then it just kind of crossed my mind like, I wonder if George could maybe take a look at this thing, and I, I don't know. So
Yeah. Yeah. So this was like, we've been talking about it, and when Joel first brought it up, I was busy. Like sometimes I'm just like overwhelmed with stuff, and I was trying to get things ready for the Ring of History and for the expo, and it was really not on my mind. And so I was like, yeah, I'll get to it, I'll get to it. And then it got to like about July. It was like middle of July or so, and I was like, yeah, okay, let me go ahead and take a look at this thing. And I'd already kind of done some homework in advance. I wanted to kind of prepare myself for what I was getting into. And then we go there, and Seamus, I get introduced to him, and then he takes me into the back and he shows me this thing, and I'm like Joel, like, wow, this is so cool. Like it's just, yeah, you see it and it's just like nothing else you've ever seen before. And then we started opening it up, and I wanted to look at what the condition was. And then I was like, oh my God, this is crazy because, the circuit boards looked totally fine. Nothing obviously wrong on the outside. But the big problem was the television. The television is a vacuum tube TV. It's one of the last ones that was commercially made before this shift from like vacuum tubes to these, solid state televisions. and it is literally shattered in pieces. So the board, like somehow that TV must have fallen, and the circuit board that controlled it was like obliterated. and so and so I was like, okay, so and I wasn't at all expecting to fix this for the expo. I was like, I got a year, maybe I can get this done for 2020. That's fine. So I started doing my homework. I started thinking about the logic board, about how to fix the television, and I realized, like, if I start thinking about the TV, it's going to kill me, because how the hell am I going to fix that? Let me focus on the board, and let me think about whether I can at least get a video signal from the board somehow, so I can see if it even works. And so I did some research, and what I discovered is that when this arcade machine was made, it's from a time before computers. Computers were very expensive, tens of thousands of dollars. So this thing is not a computer, even though that's its name. um, it's not using RGB or some kind of oddball like video signal like modern arcades do. It's not using JAMA or anything like that. There were no arcades. This is the first commercially made arcade machine. So it's actually just outputting composite video, just like your NES. And so when I realized that, I was like, well, let me see if I can just, take the output from computer space and feed it to a television, to an old CRT, and see if I can get something. And so, I started by cleaning up the board first and replacing capacitors, things that I knew were going to be bad, because there was no point in testing it until that was done. But then once I connected it up and I rigged up some composite video cables, and I got video. I mean, the video was not correct. It was like kind of scrolling, but I had video, and then I had controls, and I had sound, and I was like, this thing is alive. Like, the only reason why this thing is dead is because of the TV. It's not because of the board. And so then, like, I started thinking, like, there's maybe like 3 weeks left before the expo, but I was like, maybe I can do this. Um,
Uh, I mean, I wasn't there for it, but I do know that when you turned on that TV and you saw
yeah,
that video, I think that there was a lot of yelling going on.
there was a lot of yelling. There was a lot of profanity. There was
The good
we
profanity, not the bad profanity.
yeah, good profanity. We lost it. We couldn't believe it. And Seamus, I think, was especially shocked, because apparently someone else had tried this before and failed. So he thought that there were major problems with the board as well. So we both, like, lost it, like, totally lost it. And then um yeah, so then from there I was like, okay, so, like, now I know that the board is actually mostly fine. So now I got to think about this television, and again, like, a lot of these projects, hard, like, this is where my science background comes in. Like, doing, like, good quality research really pays off. And so, I searched extensively on this television. It's extremely hard to find one in the wild that works. And when they sell for like $1,000 or more, because people know this is a computer space monitor. So I thought about it, and I was like, well, this can't be the only monitor that's exactly the same. And so I started looking up TV repairmen's guides and things like that people had uploaded to the web from the early 70s. And I found one that listed the computer space television in a family with, like, I don't know, like 10 or 15 other televisions that were in the same chassis class, which means that they had the same guts, basically. And so then, just, I went straight to eBay. I started typing in those names, and thankfully one of them was available, working in Albany for $75. And so I was like, yeah, I'm I'm getting that, like, now. I didn't even wait for Seamus. I just bought it. And it was close by, so that minimized the risk of it getting destroyed. So it showed up at my house, and as advertised, I turned it on. It worked. And so I was like, okay, great. I don't need that TV anymore. I can throw it in the garbage. I can just use this TV. Done. So I go to Seamus. We take out the old television, and then it's like, this is very much against my scientific leanings. So we take out the TV, and then when we take it out, somebody took a permanent ink marker on the top and wrote "computer space TV" on the top of it. And it, like, I mean, you had to kind of be there, Joel. It was like, it just made us all very irrational. Like, me and Seamus and
What?
Sean.
So the new TV had that written on it?
No, the original TV inside of computer space has that written on top.
Okay.
And you can't see that, like, it's like, it's hidden, so, like, you don't
Right.
see that until you take the TV out. And so we took the TV out, and we saw that, and we were like, no, 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 we're fixing that TV. We're not going to use we're going to
Oh,
use this TV.
so that made it like emotional about what was already in there.
Yeah, it really did, because that was not the safe choice. The safe choice was just to take the old TV and throw it away and put in this new working TV. But seeing that TV, it was like, no, no, we're not gonna throw that thing away. We're gonna fix that thing. Um, and so then, I looked at the two boards, and thankfully they were perfectly identical to each other. So it took me about a good 3 hours sitting there and getting help from them, like holding wires and labeling wires. But I severed all the wires from the new TV and from the old TV, and I spliced them all together and checked everything, and and it worked. So we got it back together, and at first the screen was all fuzzy and hazy. I was like, oh god, I just did this for nothing, and I ruined a good TV. Like, I felt like so stupid. But the picture started coming in, and then and then yeah, and then again it was another moment of like screaming and profanity and excitement. And at that point we all realized, like, this thing is going to be ready for the expo, and people are going to see it and enjoy it. It's not just going to be like a museum piece. It's going to be a real piece of history that people can interact with. And we had more work to do, but like at the very last minute, like 2 or 3 days before the show, it was done, and it ran the entire show, and lots of people got to try it out. So
That's
yeah, that was the best.
yeah, that is the best. That was something for me that, like, there's a lot of rewarding things that comes from doing the convention. But something like that, I don't know, it tickled me. Like, this is special. Like, this is really freaking special. Like, this isn't
Yeah.
not just because it's, I guess partly because it's rare, but like the fact that because of a bunch of guys who are just really into this stuff, and this guy talked to this guy and this guy talked to this guy,
Right.
and then, like, just from that, this piece of history, the first arcade game that was ever released,
Yeah.
that would have sat in the corner of a shop probably until it got thrown away one day, God knows
By
when,
somebody.
uh,
Yeah.
is now working. It's resurrected. It's
Yeah.
it,
It's one of like maybe a
amazing.
hundred out there that work. Yeah.
You guys really outdid yourselves. Excellent. I know I said this in the excellent work. Really, like,
Yeah. That was one of the best moments, really. And I mean, yeah, that's the nice thing about it too. Like, it's great to restore something for a collector, but this is not for a person. This is for everybody. This is for anybody. Like, some little kid who only knows about Nintendo Switch can come and see where it all began, or some person who actually played the game when they were a kid. They can see it again working. Actually, that happened. That actually happened. There was an old woman. I don't think I ever told you this story, but yeah, I was, because I had at the show, I had my repair station right next to computer space, so I could talk about computer space and then also just kind of keep an eye on it because I was nervous about it. um, and some old woman. First I guess this guy had seen it, and then he was like bringing this old lady to see the game, and she's like, I played this when I was a little girl, and I couldn't believe it. It was so cool.
that's cool.
And yeah, and we had to get her, I got her like a little, she was short, so I got her like a little stool so she could kind of like get her head up there and actually see it and play it. And that was like one of the best moments, really.
I know that the screen was a little light, and I know you said that you had to do something else to it. I know that you did that, but I don't know what
Yeah,
that was. Like, what?
sure. Yeah, so the screen really didn't have good brightness and contrast, and it's because the screen was using original capacitors, and those capacitors are 50 years old. They're not only that, they're weird. They're not like normal electrolytics that we use now. They like take basically like four of them, and they like mash them together in some big can, and so you can't even take them apart or look at them, and so they just were not working properly. And I didn't even know how to take those off, or what they were, or how to deal with them at the time, because they're so strange compared to modern components.
Right.
So once the show was over, I did my homework. I learned what they were. I learned how to replace them with modern components, and I bought that stuff and replaced all those parts. And now it looks much better. I mean, it's still not something like, if it has head-on glare, it's still not going to be like, ideal. But actually, you saw it a week or two ago, so it looks like a lot better. You
Yeah.
can you can be across the room, and it's nice and black and white and clear, crisp image. So next year it should be even better.
That's I think that unofficially that kind of started becoming one of the convention's missions, is to, like, kind of educate, showcase, uh, be a representation of all of this stuff that people may not know about, or may not have experienced, or if they just want to learn. And
Yeah,
I'm happy about that, because we started as, all right, we like video games, you know, and we
Right.
right, and we throw out the Mario's and the Zeldas, which all have their place.
They do.
But then I think at some point, well, not I think I know, like we all talked about it, be like, well, I think we could do better. Like I think we can. If we're a retro gaming show, like we should be completely representative as much as we can about the hobby, and that's where the Ring of History came from. That started this year that we're going to add on to,
Yeah.
and that's where we have a lot of more ideas for exhibits that uh, not that we haven't even begun to finalize, but you
Yeah,
guys
but we're
will,
working on them.
yeah, working on them. You guys will see that roll out announcements throughout the year. Uh, I mean, that was a pretty long story. Is there anything else on preservation that you want to touch upon?
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, I mean, I could go into another story. So this is something that hopefully we'll see more of at the next expo. But I think a tangential topic on that is not only talking about video game history and teaching people about it and putting their interests in the larger context of the whole the whole industry basically, but our local history is important. Like, we are fortunate to live in a good place for video game history. So the very one of the very first video games was created here in Long Island at Brookhaven Laboratories on an oscilloscope. This guy, his name was, I think, William Higginbotham, and he created something called Tennis for Two. It was a Pong kind of game that was played on an oscilloscope in the late 1950s. It's one of the very first, kind of video games. Acclaim is a major video game developer that existed on Long Island in the 80s and 90s. Like when you think of things like NBA Jam and Mortal Kombat, like I mean that a lot of that happened here, and it's something that people don't even know about, and it would be really nice to educate people about that and expose people to that, and that's something I've been kind of working on now. And so yeah, just literally a few weeks ago I got contacted by someone who used to be a developer at Acclaim, and he gave me of course a non-working Game Gear. And what was interesting about it was that it's not just any Game Gear, it's a development unit Game Gear. So it has video out, and so it outputs composite video and RGB, and it was used for quality assurance and for marketing purposes, for creating these video captures and still images. And so yeah, and I mean, I'm not going to go into all the details, but I got it working. It's totally working.
I've
And
never even heard of a system like a dev kit like that, or a
yeah, as
whatever you would call it, dev
I've
model.
been I've been searching, and as far as I can tell, this is the only one that has ever been publicly discussed, like ever. I've been looking on all sorts of, forums and just trying to find any evidence, any kind of documentation, going to like the nerdiest Sega place I can find, and I haven't found a damn thing. I think this is the very first time. I mean, this can't be the only one. There have to be others,
Right.
but no one has ever publicly displayed or discussed this particular thing before. And now it's here and we have it, and next year I'm working on it to have it at the expo so that everyone can see it and try it out, and hopefully more stuff from Acclaim, so that again people get this larger context of not only video game history, but like our local history and how that contributes to the history of video games.
I do have to agree with you that we have we there's a wealth of history and talent here. I
Yeah.
mean, we were able to do this convention because of the combined efforts of, I think, just about everyone who's involved is from Long Island,
Yeah.
and it all works because of everyone's expertise. Like Dan, for instance, he's the Turbo guy, and he knows everything you could possibly know about Turbo.
Everything.
I mean, I don't, he's forgotten about more than I'll ever learn about.
Right.
So yeah, we're fortunate, man, and we're fortunate to have you on the team too, because
Thanks.
you care and you do amazing things, and and you help keep everything running.
Yeah, yeah, it's all the little things too, making sure it's all nice and seamless, and that people, yeah, I don't want these things as museum pieces. I want them to outlive me. I want them to be there for my grandchildren, and so people can really, yeah, that's a special thing about video games that makes them different from like toys or other collectible things. It's not just something that sits on a shelf. It's something that you can interact with.
It's active. It's an active.
Yeah, it's an activity. It's not a passive thing. Yeah.
Well, I think that we'll do another episode and we'll talk more about preservation, and we'll get into things like dumping of like ROM dumping of games and uh, optical drive emulators and
Yeah,
regular emulators and stuff like that. But that's a huge topic.
it is.
But